Hey, I'm Mel.
Hey, I'm Mol
Yeah, I'm Hayley.
Welcome to the Podyssey.
with the GlioBabes.
Two girls.
Two brain tumours.
One, grandma, mum, and charity trustee.
What could possibly go wrong?
Let's find out.
In today's episode, it's our absolute pleasure to be in conversation with Hayley Conroy, charity trustee, grandma, mum, and everything else amongst other things. Hayley, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a privilege. I'm honoured you thought me worthy of your podcast.
Well, we know you do so much, and we don't even know half of it, is what we've established. So we really wanted to bring you on, and we were trying to work out where do we actually start. So I think it would be very useful. I think many people will know you online from your work, but also your granddaughter Lily's story. So can you start by telling us a bit about you and about Lily's story and how that kind of segued you into advocacy with charities such as the Brain Tumour Charity?
Yeah, certainly. As I said, I'm a grandma now. You know, first and foremost, I'm a mum, and I've got two sons, Stephen and Sam. And when Stephen was 22, he and his fiance found themselves pregnant, which was quite a shock to everyone because he was just finishing his masters, and they were planning their wedding, but they weren't planning a baby. He'd literally just secured his first, graduate job and started about 2 months before Lily was born. So I was already concerned, I suppose, because, I know how hard it is to be a mum, and they were just 22 and inexperienced in all of those things. And I knew how demanding Stephen's job was going to be. So it never crossed my mind that she could end up having a serious illness. And that's what happens. Lily May, as she's known, was born almost from the start. There was something not quite right. She had a real high pitched scream. She didn't want to feed. So they took her to doctors, and the doctors decided that she was lactose intolerant. And that was the path she was then sort of on, with seeing a change in milk, seeing the dietitian, etc. And as she started getting a bit bigger, older, and being weaned, she started from being in the top 90 percentile to the bottom because she just wasn't feeding. So she was losing more and more weight. We lost count of how many times we took her to the doctors. And, you go to the doctors, you say what's wrong, they say, oh, it's fine, look out, And with Lily's case, it was almost like they were looking but not seeing, because how she presented was a very happy child, a very energetic child, very active child. And, this was when she was probably about 6 months old, until she was getting almost a year. They just kept saying that she was a fussy eater, put cream in her food. One doctor laughed and said, I've got a fussy eater as well, give her cornflakes. And when you hear that, you're kind of reassured. I mean, I knew there was something wrong, and I, did my best. It's really hard when you're I always describe myself as the wrong mum, because I'm the mother-in-law. It's not my daughter. So I'm always conscious of not wanting to be that interfering mother-in-law that everyone hears about. You try and make suggestions, and I was helping, and I was actually looking. I was very fortunate I could juggle my time. I worked US hours one day so that I could have Lily in the morning, and then I worked through afternoon and into the late evening. And when I was looking after her, I just watched this baby become a skeleton, and I would literally be changing her nappy in the morning in tears, because all I could see was skin and bones and flesh hanging off her. And the doctors weren't listening. Leanna and I both took her together. I took her on my own with Leanna's permission, because Leanna thought it was almost as if they were dismissing her as a neurotic young mother. We persuaded them. I had my mum in my ear and my sister in my ear, and everyone was concerned. So because Lily had just lost so much weight, and so we paid for her to see a private paediatrician, and thank goodness she was immediately concerned as soon as they walked in the door. And because, as I say, up until that point, the doctors were like, well, you're seeing a dietitian. You don't need to see us. The health visitors were saying, oh, well, you're seeing a dietitian. You don't need to come and see us, even though we were pleading to be seen. So there's private paediatrician commissioned lots of tests, and they were started. But actually, and unbeknown to us, she was also trying to get Lily a bed in the local hospital, but Lily got there first because Lily collapsed one day. And so they took her to A&E, and eventually she was seen, and she was put on a feeding tube and admitted to the ward. So we saw the same consultant then, obviously through the NHS, and still doing tests. And at no point was anyone thinking brain tumour. I was convinced she was celiac. I was absolutely convinced, even though they tested for celiac and it had come back that she wasn't. I was still convinced they needed to do the test again. It was all about the stomach for me, because she wasn't eating. So I had no understanding. And luckily, so they're doing all sorts of genetic tests and heart exams. And luckily, during the heart exam, she had her first birthday in hospital, and she'd been there about 10 days when she had a heart exam at another hospital. And luckily, Lily's other grandma was there, and she spotted Lily's eye was flickering. And that was the first sign. And so she told the nurses there, who said, tell the nurses back at, when you get back to the hospital. So they commissioned an MRI on her brain. And even then, I wasn't thinking brain tumour. I was in the hospital with Leanna that morning, because it was the day I would normally have Lily. And Leanna said, I've Googled and I think it could be a brain tumour. I said, no, it won't. I'm sure it's celiac. I sat with her before they went to the MRI. Then Leanna's mum arrived and her gran was coming. So I just said, look, there's too many of us here now. I'll go, keep me posted. I would never have left the hospital if I thought it was going to be a brain tumour. Because what happened, I went home and I was home alone. My husband was in the US, and about 5 o'clock, I got a phone call from Stephen and said, Mum, it's a brain tumour. And she's going to be treated by Great Ormond Street. She'll have chemo for about a year and she'll be fine. Don't worry. And I said, right, I'm coming in. He said, no, don't come to the hospital. There's too many people here now. And so I had to sit at home on my own that night. And it was awful. Luckily, my sister, I rang my sister and she managed to just about she realised something wasn't, I couldn't speak. So she came round and we sat and stared at each other all night and kept resisting the temptation to Google what it was. Eventually we did, because it turns out that Lily had something called, I never say this right, I say diencephalic syndrome, which is commonly known as failure to thrive, and it often has a glioma associated with it. And the side effects of that syndrome are euphoria and hyperactivity. And that's why she was always so happy and active. Wow. The upshot of all of that was that she's been treated by Great Ormond Street ever since. She went on to chemo. No, the diagnosis was in the November. She went on to, she had steroids first and then chemo started in the January. So she came home for Christmas. And then that was 5 years of in and out of hospital. Most of the chemo was done at home. Some was done in hospital. Over 8 different types of chemo in that 5 years. Every time, each chemo plan was about a year to 18 months long. Every time she finished, the tumour started growing back. So she was back on chemo. They couldn't operate because of where it was, because it's an optic pathway glioma. So they found that she was blind in one eye and she's got restricted periphery. So she's got restricted vision. So, and she's had treatment for side effects caused by the tumour, hormone stuff. And she's had a shunt fitted, she's had biopsies, there's been all sorts of things. And then, so in terms of Lily's journey, she got to about February, March 22. She'd run the bell. She'd sort of finished chemo officially and celebrated twice, and then did it for the third time around February 22. And she was then, we then had 2 years of her not requiring, the tumour being stable, which was wonderful. In that time, the cyst wrapped around the tumour grew, so she needed a massive operation in March 23 to drain the cyst. Again, they can't take them out, but they would drain them. But this time last year, she had a scan and the tumour had grown. So she's back on treatment for the next 2 years. It's a new sort of inhibitor drug, which is great. And we've got it. It's not released here in the UK yet. It's still under trial. They've got to get the approvals in the UK and Europe. It's available in the US, but not here. But Lily's got it on compassionate grounds, thanks to gosh. Oh, and the pharma. So we're very fortunate, and so far so good. She had a scan Friday, so we're waiting for those results. But in terms of my story, I had no idea. When Stephen said to me on that night, didn't need chemo for a year, and then she'll be fine. I believe that, because that's what most people have chemo, and then lots of instances if they think you're going to be fine, you typically are. And I didn't know anything. I knew people that had brain tumours in the past and mixed results, but not close enough to really understand what they are. And the biggest thing was that I had no idea how reliant we are on charities. And how much the charities do for people in our situation. And that made us want to do more. So the first thing we did was we set up a Team Gosh fund for Lily to raise money for Great Ormond Street, because they were treating her, and we can direct where the money goes. So we've raised over 50,000 pounds for that. I did all sorts of things. I did a 50k walk. when I got remarried, we all we didn't want presents, we wanted donations to charity, anything I could think of, I was doing to add to the pot. And we funded a lot of research through with that. But the first tranche I went towards their starting sound building. So Lily's name is on a plaque on the wall for that, which is a nice memory. We got to the stage where my son Stephen said, "This is all great, Mum, but we can't keep asking the same people for money because it's always the same people that pay." And we might, we're not out of the woods. We might have to go fund me one day. We might need to ask for some serious monies. Let's do something else. So I'd already thought about being an ambassador for Gosh, which I did, and I signed up to that just before. Literally, I did the course, got the T-shirt, and lockdown hit. So didn't really do much on that for all of that time. And then in that time, I was being a bit of an advocate. I was telling Lily's story on Children's Cancer Awareness Month. I got myself on Radio 5 a couple of times when I texted in or called in. But I realised I needed to do more. And I couldn't do it as a one-man band. So I decided that I spoke to my pension advisor and realised I could technically retire. And that's what I did. So I gave my company, I was an associate partner at EY by that time. I'd been at EY my entire career, and I gave them 9 months notice just because of the project I was working on. I think they needed to know I wasn't going to be there, even though I was doing the planning. And that really gave me 9 months to decide what to do. And I knew that I wanted to be involved in charities. I knew I didn't want to fundraise. I knew how hard that was and how heartbreaking it is because you get so personal. And if somebody's not responding to you asking for them to buy a raffle ticket or something, I'd sort of take it personally. Yeah. I think, why isn't this important? And of course, everyone has their own views and their own charities that are important to them. But it's hard. So I knew I wanted to do more. And a very close friend of mine, Fraser, we were down staying with him and his wife for the weekend. And he was saying, "What are you going to do? You can't just bucket shake." And I said, "No, I know." And he basically badgered me the whole weekend to try and convince me I should be a trustee. And I was like, I really had imposter syndrome. I was like, no, I can't possibly do that. When I said, "I've seen the bios of these people. And what am I going to say?" And he says, "You underestimate yourself." I said, "Well, maybe, but so we talked about it most of Saturday, and then Sunday morning he started again. And in the end, I said, "Okay, I'll look into it." And that's where I started to think through, well, I knew I wanted to do things in the area of children's charities or brain tumours. I wasn't sure that I could only be involved in brain tumours the whole time because it's really hard when you're so personally affected, as you guys obviously know. And so I kept my options open. I decided to contact a couple of partners I'd known in the past and seek their advice. And luckily for me, they made some introductions immediately. And long story short, but those introductions led to me applying for it was a brain tumour charity. We were recruiting trustees, which was just an amazing coincidence. So I, did a CV, wrote a cover letter and applied for that. I also had a chat with the chief exec at Gosh to see how I could help Gosh. And I had a chat with the chief exec at Make-A-Wish to see what I could do with them. I'd done a lot of tech work in my last 12 years at EY, sort of digital transformation side of things. I'm not an IT person. I'm doing it from the business side of things. And they had some big tech projects, and I ended up, I've helped them on some things. And so that's where I, have become involved in the charities that I do today. And funnily enough, the contacts, it's amazing where contacts lead you to, because the contacts have also led me to an organisation called Next Up. And I often join their speaker panels. They run workshops for law firms and accounting firms where their partners are due for retirement. And I sit on the speaker panel and tell about my retirement journey. And that's interesting to do. We have sort of a 10-minute slot. So you've had the slightly longer version just now, but they get a 10-minute version.
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Hayley, and telling us how you kind of got into the charity side and Lily's story. There were so many things that you said that you picked up on in terms of like being a young mom and then taking Lily to the hospital and then thinking various other diagnoses apart from a brain tumour. And I know I was very similar when I was diagnosed. I thought, it can't be a brain tumour, it can't be this, it can't be that. I just kept crossing it out and thinking it was other things. And then it wasn't until I had a blood test that came back high in prolactin. and I googled that, and the first thing it came up with was a brain tumour. So then I was pushing then through the doctors and things, but I was similar. I was diagnosed in A&E myself. But in terms of advocacy and how you're campaigning for a faster diagnosis, what do you believe is the biggest barrier in the current healthcare system to getting that earlier diagnosis, and how do you think we can overcome it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's, one single thing is hard to pinpoint. I think from what I've experienced, and when I think about what the Brain Tumour Charity are trying to do, for me, it comes down to the awareness of the GPs. And I don't blame our GPs for not diagnosing a brain tumour, but I do blame them for not spotting that Lily was ill. All those doctors that just kept saying, look how happy she is, look how active she is, she can't be seriously ill, because seriously ill children do not present in that way. And that's wrong. And so they need to know that, because the paediatrician knew it the moment they pushed Lily in the buggy into her office, but not a single doctor thought that. So it's that, for me, I think it's just that awareness and, making them, and the trouble is the signs and symptoms are tricky. There's the obvious ones that we know about. People think, headaches, they don't realise that headaches can be a sign of brain tumour. Obviously, they can also be a sign of lots of other things. But I think it's almost that for us, it was that Lily had been pigeonholed into fussy eater, needs a dietitian, and nobody was thinking broader than that. So every time we tried to ring up to say, can we come and see her, they'd say, well, you're seeing the dietitian. You don't need to, and actually the time, Lily's next dietitian appointment was in the January. She was diagnosed with a brain tumour the November before. So I'm hopeful that, the programme we're doing around GP awareness and all of that side of things, when you think about the charities campaign for a national brain tumour strategy, the starting point there is all around that diagnosis and raising and actually before I even knew much about the Brain Tumour Charity, I was handing out the Head Start leaflets, as they were called back then.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they were associated with the Brain Tumour Charity. That was the first thing I did after Lily was diagnosed. I got a pack of them and I took them straight to the GP and says, please make your GPs read these, and please, have them available for patients to read as well.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to, when you've only got that very short window with the GP as well, and they kind of have to, oh, well, I can't refer you because I've got to do this first. I've had it myself with just minor things. I know you can't see a consultant. Let me get you an X-ray. So it's encouraging the GPs to not necessarily follow a set path that they've always done. And the challenge is that, some GPs might only see one brain tumour in their entire career. So they're not going to think brain tumour every time somebody walks in the door with certain things.
So it's funny you say that, Hayley, because after my diagnosis, I'd done the same thing. So it's not Head Smart anymore. It's Better Safe Than Tumour. I'd done the same thing, and I just went and gave them out to everyone that I could think of.
So it's funny you say about the leaflets, actually, because I did a load in my village, and I had loads. I had 2 loads arrive. But then I saved some so that I could take Lily round to do it because she wanted to do it with me. This was a couple of years ago now. So the 2 of us went out and I was doing some posts on social media, and we went to one place and we got stuck. So we went to this one house and we had to press a button to get through an electric gate. And then we had to press another button to get through another electric gate. And they let us through. And then when we got to the front door, we couldn't find a letterbox at all. There was no letterbox on the door, and there was dogs going mad inside the house, luckily. And Lily's saying, well, look, somebody must be in there, let us in. Yeah, so we're knocking on, and nobody answered the door. And in the end, I said, we're just going to have to go. And so when we got back, the gates didn't open. We couldn't get the gates to open. So one of them we managed to open, and we could see through them. They were just bar gates,
Yeah.
like you have on farmland. And so I was thinking we have to climb over. So we managed to get through a little gate. We managed to open the first one, but then we got to this other one, and there was no way it was going to open. And we were pressing on the buzzer, and nobody was answering. And I'm thinking, I can't believe these people let us in, and they're now not let us out. And so Lily had to crawl through the gap in the bars to get out. And then I think at that point the gate must have opened. I can't quite remember, but anyway, I was able to get out. But at one point I thought I might have to climb out, leg it over the gate and clamber out. I don't know what was going on then. I'm sure they must have CCTV, and we're laughing their heads off at us. But yeah, that was I think the last envelope we delivered, and we have not done it any more since.
The things we do for advocacy, eh? That's quite the
Absolutely.
story. Yeah, I don't have any cool ones like that, unfortunately. I think you've beaten anyone that I've heard. So well done. That's really, really good. So we know this is just one thing that we know people can get involved all the time. And when we had Michelle on, CEO of the Brain Tumour Charity, she gave us a huge list of how people can get involved, not just with the Brain Tumour Charity, but with all forms of brain tumour activism, however people want it to look for them and how best fits. Is that English?
How it
Fits
fits
best.
best.
Okay.
How it fits best.
Sorry. And how it fits best for them. So that's just one campaign, but something we know that you've been massively involved in, and we'd love to know how it happened, what happened, how on earth we got to this point, is this Wix partnership, which we know recently you guys have won an award for. Congratulations.
We did. Thank you.
And you've got to £2 million.
Yes.
Is it?
So the partnership's come to an end, and we've achieved the £2 million target that Wix had set themselves. And we got shortlisted for the Third Sector Business Charity Awards, and we were shortlisted for Best Short-Term Partnership, and we were up against about 4 others. And we went to the awards ceremony last Thursday, and I could not believe it when how Credodden, which was amazing because he's a supporter of the Brain Tumour Charity. He's one of our high-profile supporters. He was the compere on the stage announcing the winners and presenting the trophy, is it called? And it was him. So it was just, the whole Wix thing has been incredible with how it has come together. And so, you know, the partnership itself has been brilliant. But for me personally, it really shows the ripple effect of how one decision that you make can take you places that you would never, ever have imagined. And so therefore how important just going for it, you know. So winding back to that weekend with Fraser, when he persuaded me to look at being a charity trustee, neither of us knew what that was going to end up at.
Yeah.
And we certainly would never have imagined it was going to result in he and I standing on the stage at Wix in front of 500 of their senior management telling a story about Lily and why it was so important. And so, you know, in terms of how that happened, you know, I became the trustee. My son Sam, I mentioned Sam at the start. So my younger son Sam, Lily's uncle, so when Wix have a program of having a charity partner once every 2 years, and they aim to raise about £2 million, which they do through their stores, through events with their suppliers, and obviously customers through the stores, and the staff all get engaged and do fundraising, etc. So back in, well, 2 years ago, in 23, my son Sam, who also works at Wix, and obviously I don't actually said, so Fraser is the chief operating officer at Wix, or he was until last month. He was just retired.
No way.
But my son Sam works at Wix. So Sam was telling me that he was involved in a project to help Wix, you know, the group of them as managers were involved in selecting Wix's charity partner for the next partnership coming up. So this would have been 22 coming into 23. And so he and all the employees are able to nominate charities. And then they get whittled down, meeting, you know, various criteria, etc. And then they get a shortlist, and then it goes to the employee vote. Sam said to me, I'm going to nominate the Brain Tumour Charity because of everything you're doing. And I said, that's brilliant. That's lovely of you. Thank you. You know, and I thought, that's lovely, but you know, it's going to come down to a vote. But yeah, we did. So, you know, when we got shortlisted, we were able to promote it. So I did tons of posts saying why it was going to be so great if the employees voted for the Brain Tumour Charity and how much it meant to me. Fraser was sharing all my posts and basically saying, if anyone's interested in who I'm voting for, it's Brain Tumour Charity. Sam was doing the same. But obviously, you know, that only goes so far. You know, I don't have that bigger following. So, you know, at the end of the day, it was down to the employees, and they did vote for us, and that was amazing. But because Fraser, in his role, he organises their annual manager conference, and so he said to me after we won, he says, we tend to launch the new charity at a conference. Would you come and be part of that and be on stage with me and tell Lily's story and why it's so important? So I did, and that was really scary. You know, 500 people listening. And then, you know, so that was lovely doing that with Fraser. And we did a closing one, actually. I went last month and did a thank you. And Fraser introduced me, and Sally from the charity, actually. We did it together. And so, you know, I've been personally involved in going to some of the helping out at the 50 PR. So I don't know if you've been involved in any of those. They've been great. I've also gone to the golf days, so that's been lovely, because Sam also gets to go to the golf days because his role means the suppliers invite him along. So I've been doing that, you know. So the thought of doing something with one of your closest friends and friends you've known for, you know, I've known him all my adult life pretty much, and your son is just fantastic. And that's where I thought, I can't believe that, you know, we're going to win that war. Because it was just a dream come true to have done so much. And I think that, you know, why it was so successful was the relationships, and this is why I was so passionate at the start, having heard all about Wix from both Fraser and Sam and their culture and how their people were. And then being so familiar with the brain tumour charity, I just knew if the two came together, it would be so amazing, because they have such a similar set of values, similar culture. And if we can get that buy-in, you know, when I tell the story, I got a message from somebody on LinkedIn actually the other day who said that, you know, seeing me sturdy on that stage at the start, telling Lily's story, they'll remember forever. You know, it touched them. And I think when you're touching people in such a way, they really get behind the cause. And I think that's the importance of what we all do. It's our stories that bring people along, you know. And this is what I'll be telling Lily one day when she's older, and she says, "Why did you talk about me so much?" And I'll say, "Well, because you have to." And so for me, it's the personal stories. And, you know, it's Lily's story, it's your stories. That's what brings people in. And that's what I'm hoping to explain to Lily when she's older, if she starts saying, "Well, why did you talk about me so much?" And she occasionally says now, but I don't feel I can explain it enough, because she is only 8 and I don't want to upset her, because I don't think she understands the seriousness of her condition. And I don't want to say that, you know, if you can make people cry listening to your story, you've got a chance of engaging them and motivating them to help. But, you know, that isn't my aim. But, you know, it's invariably what happens, because it's very sad. And, you know, it's a fight that we're continuing to do, aren't we, all of us, you know, telling these stories is how you get people bought in. And I think that's what, you know, and working together, having the same set of values. You know, the leadership was so supportive at Wix, and the staff were as well. So to have all that buy-in, you know, because the money, it's not Wix necessarily donating the money, it's all of their staff raising money, and the leaders doing crazy things, and getting teams together to do things, their suppliers, and all of those things. And that was the other thing I loved doing was, you know, I went to their gala. They have a gala evening once a year, and again, to go there, and my mate's there, you know, Fraser's there, and my son's there.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Do you want to jump in, Mel?
Isn't it I'm so sorry, Hayley. I'm really not with it today. It's your, or is it not?
Sorry, no, yeah, it is. It's me. Okay, sorry, that's my fault.
That's right.
I mean, in terms of like the partnership with Wix that the Brain Tumour Charity's had over the past 2 years is just incredible. I mean, my dad goes to Wix a lot, and he always comes home and he's always like, "Oh, you know, I've seen the box and I've spoke to them," and you know, he's even gone in and gave them like flyers and stuff for the charity just to remind them of why they're doing it and stuff. But aside from Wix, because we know this is a massive thing that you've been able to do to help the charity along with as well, but what's one piece of like progress that within the brain tumour space that you're most proud of since joining the charity as their trustee?
I've been involved in a number of areas, which is obviously not going to surprise you. I've really enjoyed being part of the strategy. So the first thing I did, when I joined the charity on the Monday, we had our induction. On the Tuesday, we had a workshop with all the existing trustees, and it was a day session on the charity's strategy going forward and helping to set it. And they were doing it in collaboration with the brain tumour community. I was so engaged and thought it was so brilliant what they were doing and how they were going about it, that at the end of the day, I spoke to the people who had run that session for us and said, how can I help? What can I do? Please let me. And they, emailed a few days later saying, were you serious? Do you really want to? And I said, yes, please. Well, how I've described in the past is when you're the grandma, you feel you're in this outer circle and you're looking in at your child with their child.
Yeah.
And your heart breaks for them both because you feel the pain. You're already worried about the baby, but you're then really worried about, I was really worried about my son, my daughter-in-law, still am. And, I'm in this outer circle and there is only so much you can do as a grandparent.
Yeah.
I can look after Lily. Lily's got a little sister now called Luna, who's 4. I look after the girls once, a couple of times a week. I help out when I can. Whenever Lily has a scan, I have Luna. In fact, on Friday, she's back at Gosh and I've got the dog instead of Luna's elsewhere. So I've got the dog. And that's lovely. But you can only do so much. It's not your child. And the sort of person I am, I spent 33 years at EY. I was an auditor for 20 of those years. I was taught to ask questions and I'm naturally curious. I have got so more questions in me around Lily's situation, about you guys, than I could ever possibly be allowed to ask. I pick my top couple and ask when I can of Leanna usually, because Stephen doesn't like to talk about these things. And Lily now will share a lot with me, but again, I can't ask her directly. I just receive what she has to say. But so to channel that, I get involved in the charity side, and because I want to do something to really make a difference. And that's where being a trustee is great, but there's only so much you can do as a trustee. So there's been things I've been trying to do. There's a line, and Michelle and I often talk about it. As a trustee, you're there. You have a set role. You are overall responsible for the charity, but you delegate the running of the charity to, and the operations of the charity to the management team, to the directors. But what I can do is I can help out. I can give support. And that's the sort of thing I did with the strategy. But on the other side, on the campaigning, because I know we wanted to touch about campaigning anyway. When you write to your MP, I'm not writing on behalf of the charity. I'm writing on behalf of me and my family. And, I contacted my previous MP and he got me a meeting a few years back with Will Quince when he was the health minister. And we talked specifically around faster diagnosis and that need for GP awareness. But then he resigned from his position and I've got a new MP now. So I was really lucky that he knocked on my door during their campaigning. And I had a copy of the National Brain Tumour Strategy printed out next to the door in case anyone knocked. And he knocked. And so I spoke to him and I said, can I give you the, and I explained very quickly, I said, I'd love to meet you. And he agreed. So this was before he got elected, made the connections. And I explained to him and he said that if he was successful, he'd meet with me. And he was successful. So we had a meeting. And since then, he's asked a question. He's submitted a written question for me. He's asked a question in the health section when they could do oral questions. And together we wrote a letter to Ashley Dalton, the health minister, and that was in response. So the question that he asked was answered by her, and she very amazingly called me out and Lily, which was quite a shock that she knew that she sort of commended me for my work as trustee for the brain tumour charity. So she obviously had the details in the notes and she'd read it, and that was very kind, and she is very supportive. I think when I'm asking the questions and when I work with the MP on writing the letter, I was specifically thinking about the brain tumour charity and asking the government and asking Ashley Dalton if they would work with the charity and when they're developing the National Cancer Plan, so that all of the specifics that we need considered relating to brain tumours are properly considered and are encompassed in that plan, and not just glossed over thinking, it's we'll say and brain tumours as a tag on. Because we all know that there are nuances about brain tumours, and we also know that low-grade tumours are as tragically as can be as hard-hitting and damaging as the high-grade gliomas. So I think the work we've done and the work I've seen the charity do on the campaigning has been amazing. I do feel we're turning the corner on it, and we've done so much more. I was at Westminster standing with Lily's photo. I was one of the 34 people representing the 34 people a day who were diagnosed with a brain tumour. We all talked about what a no-brainer was. And, part of that signing of the letter that the charity started with their call of the National Brain Tumour Strategy. So it's not over yet. There's a long way to go. The Rare Cancers Bill passing through the second reading was quite a moment. It was quite it's quite an experience to be in Westminster witnessing that. I don't know if you've been in Westminster and seen these things, but sitting on the in the public gallery, hearing for 3.5 hours MP after MP talking about, telling a story of either themselves, their loved ones, or their constituents, all about brain tumours. It was supposed to be a debate. There wasn't much debating. It was full support of what was needed. It was quite incredible.
That's it. There shouldn't be a debate. We would have all been kicking off if there was really. And I was watching that whilst I was on a train, which was a bad idea. I always tend to watch the things I shouldn't watch on a train because they will make me cry. So I don't think there's been a train journey in 2025 I haven't cried on, thanks to the Brain Tumour Charity in some way. So that's phenomenal. But these are tough things. And we touch upon this quite a bit. I like to touch upon it in all the social media work I do. There's a horrible backing as to why we're here today all having this conversation. And it's absolutely terrifying if we actually let ourselves properly think about it beneath the surface. So from you, we know that you're very open with a lot of what you do, and also you're everywhere. Like, you're doing a lot. How do you, and what top tips do you have for us, for other advocates, for young people, for whoever listening this, forever listen?
It's okay.
Right, give me a minute. For anyone that's listening to this, what sort of advice do you give for kind of like looking after yourself and your mental well-being and emotions through all the work that you do?
It's such an important area, isn't it? And I'm still navigating that myself, because I think that it evolves. I think at the start it was very hard because I'm always worried about how Stephen and Leanne are coping. Now that Lily's a bit older, it's, well, how's Lily feel about this? And there's also, is Luna thinking at 4? She'll come out with all sorts of things. And does she really get it? She's still way too young. And I think I felt that I couldn't really talk to, I had to be strong, and can't possibly talk to. It's really hard to know who to talk to because everyone's feeling it. And I think in the early times, I was really lucky in the first few weeks after diagnosis. My boss was very understanding. I was working on I was just kicking off a really big project, but he and I agreed that I would just go on, put my out of office on for as long as I need to. But I carried on working because I needed to do some work, but I had to just do easy stuff. I couldn't face being in meetings with people. So I was in meetings with my boss, so I just got other stuff done that I could work on whilst trying to deal with it. And at the same time, I could go and sit in the corner and just cry and, and everything else that you need to do. But I didn't, it was hard. And I think for me, in the 5 years, so Lily was diagnosed in 2017, the end of 2017, and then I retired in the end of March 22. And in that time, work was my distraction. Because I had to do it, and I could sort of throw myself into the work and be on calls, and it was hard. And sometimes I'd be on a call and I'd have to listen to someone's woes about their child who had been sick in the night and what have you, and you just think, and you try and be sympathetic but in your head you're thinking, oh, you're so lucky if that's your biggest issue right now. But equally, I realise it's a problem for you, so I will be, empathic and supportive. And it's a distraction because it stops me thinking about what I'm doing. And I think it was very much on my mind when I retired, because I've got a lot more time now. And I naively thought that I'd have the girls for a couple of days and I'd have the other 3 days doing charity work. And it doesn't work out like that. I don't spend, I spend time at the gym, I'm learning to play golf. And there's some of the things I'm actually doing for me. I am more active physically. I do go to the gym. Learning to play golf is something is good because I can do with my family. Even Lily plays a bit of golf. And it's nice to get out. And actually, I like to go out on my own and just hit a couple of balls because I am a beginner. And so all my concentration has to be on where did the damn thing go? I can't see where it is. How many times have I now hit it? And which one? How many times have I hit that one versus that one? Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. And so it's a distraction. And, I might be at the driving range while I know Lily is seeing a consultant and we're waiting for results because, again, I'm focus on something else, because if I go for a walk or I'm in the gym, my mind is full of it all. Whereas if I'm actually hitting a golf ball, I'm too busy thinking about, oh, that was a rubbish shot. Why did I do that wrong? Let me focus now. Let me think about my hands or, how I'm standing or whatever I'm doing. So that's good. But I think the other thing I do, and actually, I'll be honest, I'll be open, and I hope that you guys have too, but I've had, and I'm having counselling. And I think it is important to have somebody else that you can talk to, because when I talk to friends, they try and offer solutions and there aren't any. This isn't going away. And I think it's having somebody where you can just voice your greatest fears if you choose to. I haven't gone there yet, but I have nearly, but I didn't do it for long. I stepped right out again. And I think that, as a result of that, I've realised that I follow everything. I choose when I listen to things. I choose when I read things. Molly, you said that, you've listened to something or watched something on every train journey and you've been in tears. Well, I sometimes will like something. I sometimes won't fully read and digest what's been written because if I don't think I can emotionally deal with it at that point. I've got Nicola Nuttall's book. It's on I don't think you can see it, but it's on my bookshelf. And I said to her, I've ordered it and I will read it, but not yet because I can't. And, I've got it. It's on the shelf. I will read it, but I just know that I'm not strong enough right now. And that's where I'll be honest with you guys. I look to see what your podcasts cover. I don't listen to them all because I wait until I'm able to and when I can deal with it. And I think that's really important. And I think it's about recognizing, when you're in a place where you can do things and when you're in a place you can't. And I think that, it's important that people understand this. And I think with yourselves, I think it's wonderful that you're as honest as you are, particularly you, Mol. I think it's so important because people don't get it. People see you in the photos and getting awards and doing speeches and they think, oh, look, she's great. She's doing really well. They've got no idea what's going on underneath. And I think you have to give yourself time. And that's what I'm learning to do. So I'm not necessarily, and as I was at the start, I was looking for, I need some more work. Whereas now actually I recognise that I've got enough work and I actually need to make sure I carve out space for me and recognise when I can and can't deal with things. I made a massive mistake the day of the records spill because I had no idea what it was going to entail. I had no idea. Cameron, the charity, had said to me, look, Hayley, we may not get in. It may not last very long. It may not get passed. Only 20% of bills get through the second reading. And so I wasn't for 1 second thinking it was going to evolve the way it did with what I just said earlier about 3.5 hours listening to these heartbreaking stories and being emotionally draining. And I had to literally come back from that, go and pick Lily up from school, pick up my niece, get Luna, and I had the sleepover. I mean, it was not a night to be having a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 17-year-old sleeping over at all. And, big mistake. And I won't do it again. It was a very long weekend.
Yeah, it's like you said though, Hayley. It's learning to recognise when we can. Sorry. It's learning to recognise when we can put ourselves into that space and when we can listen to podcasts or when we can watch something or read something. But I think being aware of that and knowing that is a thing, I think is powerful in itself, and that's looking after ourselves enough. Do you know what I mean? In terms of what we're exposing ourselves to and when. But one final question for you, Hayley, if you don't mind, I'm going to backtrack a bit and go back to the rare cancers bill. What do you think policymakers don't understand about the brain tumour community? Because I've also met with my local MP, and I know Mol talks about this a lot as well, living in Wales. But in terms of, so I met with my local MP, and I also took a copy of the National Brain Tumour Strategy, which is where I met yourself last year when we were all stood on the green in the pouring rain with our photos. I'll never forget that. So I took a copy of the reading, and my MP has since then wrote a letter to Wes Streeting about the importance and the need for a national brain tumour strategy, because like you said before, what we don't want to happen is we don't want the rare cancers bill to come out and then brain tumours are just in the little T's and C's at the bottom. We want it to be included, and I personally think it's great that the rare cancers bill has been passed, but I also think that we do need a national brain tumour strategy as well. So what do you think policymakers don't understand about the brain tumour community?
And I think that there's another element of that as well, is that, if rare cancers bill get passed, that'll be great, but it's only got the three things it's looking at doing. And that isn't everything, as we know, that we're calling for in the National Brain Tumour Strategy. And I think the concern I've got is that, the other thing that is out there that the government are talking about all the time, and in fact, Keir Starmer answered this in PMQs last week, and they immediately say, oh, we've got the National Cancer Plan. That will include brain tumours.
Yeah, it really annoys me because it's not the same, is it? And I had this conversation with my MP, and I was saying, it's rare cancers bill this, rare cancers bill that, but I said a lot of the stuff that me and Molly especially say online, like workshops and stuff, it's never for low grade. But I always think that people need to be reminded that no matter how low grade is low grade, or how benign, or whatever way you want to talk about it, at the end of the day, it's still a tumour. It's still a mass growing inside of my head that shouldn't be there. And, there should be more done for those benign tumours and low grade tumours. And I personally think that is why we need the National Brain Tumour Strategy. It's all well and good, rare cancers bill and all the rest of it. And yeah, that will help us, but not to the degree of what a National Brain Tumour Strategy would in terms of covering all those levels.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. And I think that, even the national, I think if we don't get the strategy, but the National Cancer Plan has got everything we're asking for as part of the strategy. So you've got the Red Cancer Bill, then you've got the National Cancer Plan. If that can encompass everything we're looking for, then you may not need a separate National Brain Tumour Strategy. And I think my biggest concern is that they're almost saying, well, we don't need a national strategy because we've got this National Cancer Plan. And I am worried, as you just said, that they don't fully understand the consequences. Even the high-grade tumours aren't the same as other cancers. They're not staged. You don't have stage 4 of a brain tumour. It's not the same way. The diagnosis isn't the same. So many bits are different. And actually, one of the things that sort of struck me, I had a visit this week actually to a charity called the Children's Trust. It deals in children with severe brain injury, and in talking to the people there, they said that the thing they notice that stands out to them from brain tumours versus other brain injuries, in fact, is the fatigue. And I think that's probably also the same for other cancers. So, and that's what I'm learning with Lily, is that the fatigue that somebody with a low grade brain tumour has, as well as a high grade brain tumours, you may have had the operation, you may have had, the chemo or the inhibitor, whatever the treatment might be nowadays, or radiotherapy, and the tumour may not be growing, but the consequences it's got on your brain are immense and they're life changing. And they have an impact on your mental health. And we've got the vision at the Brain Tumour Charity that we want everyone with a brain tumour to live longer and better. Well, the better is trying to do something about when you've had your treatment, or even during the treatment, your quality of life is better. And that's all parts of it. And it is, what on earth can be done to help that fatigue, to help on the mental health side as well, because You know, you're not going to live better if your mental health isn't there as well. It's not just the physical side. And I think that certainly people I know who have had cancer treatment that's successful, or their cancer might be in remission, and I might be wrong. There's bound to be people that will listen and say, no, that's not true. But the people I've come across all seem to be doing well. You know, their cancer and the treatment hasn't left them with lifelong consequences. And I think that brain tumours are very different in that regard, because I think everyone with a brain tumour has an impact.
Honestly, Hayley, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for taking the time to come on our podcast.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So once again, Hayley, thank you so much for coming on and joining us on our podcast. This episode has been fantastic, if I do say so myself. But yeah, we've covered Lily's story. We've covered how your journey began into charity and now being a trustee for the brain tumour charity and all the work that you've done with Gosh and everything else in between. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Yes, Hayley, I echo everything Mel said. Thank you so much. We are seriously in awe of you and look up to you greatly. And I'm sure our listeners will as well. So for anyone here, please know that you can find all episodes of the GlioBabes on Spotify, and all our guest episodes are available on YouTube as well. So if you want to see everyone's lovely faces, which I do recommend, then you can catch them on YouTube, and you can follow our social media on TikTok, the.GlioBabes, and Instagram at the GlioBabes. As always, we know that these are really tough topics we've spoken about today, and every episode, but we've really gone deep today. So in the show notes, the comments, and all over our social media, we will ensure that all the support lines are available, not just to the Brain Tumour charity, but people that do amazing work around mental health, and anything that we can find may help anyone. And of course, we are here. Please drop the GlioBabes a message anytime, and we are always happy to listen and help wherever we can.